Hi, I'm Earl Laborde. Marcia is off tonight. A former sheriff faces increased accusations. We'll take a look. There's no call tonight as we make the call on Gail Benson's first year as a sports boss. We'll also look at the numbers for an alleged drunken driver, a car chase that went wrong, and our Future Watch segment updates the new airport. At the gate for us are tonight's informed sources. Katie Moore, anchor and reporter for WWL-TV, Channel 4. Ramon Antonio Vargas, reporter for the New Orleans Advocate. And Dawn Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Ramon, we start off with you. There was just a terrible incident the other night where a police unit spotted a car that they identified as being a stolen car. Apparently they started pursuit. The car sped away and crashed into a beauty parlor, and a fire started, and an innocent person was killed. And now there's investigations of the whole protocol used by the police.
Sure, and I guess the police have stopped short of conceding that a pursuit took place. So they tried to pull a car over that matched the description of a stolen vehicle. The car sped off, and obviously the officers had their flashers on. And I mean, there's been a surveillance video, I think that Fox 8 aired, and I spoke to a person who was walking along the scene and a few blocks away, some distance away from where the initial traffic stop attempt happened. The officers, I guess, are described as having their flashers on and at least tailing the car. The issue for the officers is that policies, NOPD's policies prohibit dangerous chases, high-speed chases, and in almost every case, right, and especially in the cases of a nonviolent criminal suspect, nothing indicates that the people who were in the car had done anything other than be in possession of a stolen car, which is not a violent crime. And so there is, I think today, there were 6 officers who were put on desk duty while that investigation plays out about whether they complied or ran afoul of internal rules governing.
Why 6? Was this morning one?
Yeah, there were so it's going to be six officers who were involved in the who were behind the car at some point, and so it was 3 two-man cars. Is the information that we were given. And so while that investigation plays out, they'll be on desk duty. And I guess the big question is going to come down to if did they comply with those rules that govern vehicle pursuits. The policy is complicated; it's a 14-page policy, and or if did they comply or did they run afoul of them, and really from just my educated guess, I don't know everything about it, and there's still a lot obviously to figure out. I don't think the agency does, but my educated guess is that a lot of it is going to come down to the central question is going to be, did they fall back from the car soon enough before the crash happened, and those rules are designed to prevent the very incident that happened, which was not only were the 2 people killed in the car, and all indications are that they were young people, but as well as a woman who was having her hair done in the salon, died from apparently from burns and smoke inhalation from the fire that broke out in the salon after the crash happened. So
the protocol would allow a unit to at least put on the blue lights, at least signal
sure
the behind.
And really, it's I have tried my best to study that policy and understand it, but really the standard comes down to the moment, if it is a nonviolent criminal suspect, the moment that it becomes clear that the person does not intend to stop, whether that's through evasive actions, speeding significantly, weaving in and out of traffic, things like that. They're supposed to fall back, and obviously you're in contact with your supervisors, right? A supervisor is giving you permission or authorization to continue a pursuit or calling it off, but really the standard is when it becomes clear that the person doesn't intend to stop because they're driving evasively, is when you're supposed to fall back. There was only about a little less than a mile in between the attempted traffic stop and where the crash occurred. And obviously, those blocks go by quickly if you're driving, at any type of speed.
Especially when you do it in an urban setting with so much traffic going on and so much activity, and then sometimes they head to the interstate, and I personally knew of someone who was a victim because of that a car in pursuit crashed into his car, and so it could really be a terrible thing.
Yeah, these incidents have been relatively rare with NOPD since these policies were adopted with the federal reform agreement known as the consent decree about 6 years ago. But I mean, this is largely this type of incident has been eliminated from the agency because of those rules, and that's why they're giving it such a close look.
They are different from other agencies, though,
Yes,
like state police, for example. Still
or Jefferson
very
Parish
much.
Sheriff's Office also does not have such restrictive vehicle pursuit policies. They
will
have them,
chase.
but and we've seen a lot of the incidents that have happened in the city where there's been a police chase and a crash has often been either state police patrolling within New Orleans city limits or a surrounding agency chasing someone into the city. And so this incident stands out because the consent decree has done a pretty good job of I think mostly rooting that out.
So the laws as they apply to the state police, what if their unit was in New Orleans? Would they have to follow the New Orleans protocol? Or
No, the state police is not bound by the internal rules that NOPD has adopted as part of the consent decree.
Right. And so those officers are on so-called desk duty.
Yes, they're reporting to work, but they are not patrolling the streets while the investigation plays out.
You don't think there's any word on the street, do you, that criminals know I can get away because the police aren't going to chase me?
I mean, certainly it. It's tough to gauge. I mean, certainly when you talk to people who are more in the police's corner, we'll kind of point at that as one thing that shows. Oh well, they know that like they can't chase them. They can, and it's just I think there's a very kind of on the fly and so far effective risk analysis done. Where I mean, if the only thing that someone is doing is possessing a stolen car, it offends like I think any law-abiding citizen. That like, but at the same time, this is the very outcome that those rules are designed to prevent.
So you think maybe in the age of drones, they could get a drone up there and just following it?
Well, I mean, they certainly the crime camera network is expansive enough where I think the thinking is, we can try to piece together and at least once they leave the car somewhere, we can try to find, and if we can find them, great. If we can recover the car, great. And we'll try to use our kind of non-confrontational investigative methods to do that.
Okay. Kid, you've been following former Sheriff Jack Strain. A whole lot of things are being investigated. So far, no legal action. But this week you reported something which is just shocking. Could you first begin by accounting on the things that he's being investigated for?
Sure. So we know from court documents and from court filings in a case that involves two of Strain's former top deputies that Strain is the target of a federal investigation into some sort of kickback scheme involving the work release program. Charging documents in that case, which have now led to guilty pleas in that case, implicate Strain as the former St. Tammany sheriff. Like, he's not named in the indictment in the bill of information, but it says that the kickback scheme involved the former St. Tammany sheriff from the years of X and Y, which are the years that Jack Strain was sheriff.
So that's a pretty good indication.
Pretty good indicator that it's Jack Strain.
Yeah.
So we know that. We know that there are these allegations involving the work release in that his two top deputies and their children were essentially set up to run this work release program as a private program, and then they've admitted to kicking back some of the money that they made from that program to Strain and some of Strain's relatives. So when that investigation first began, I don't think that anybody really realized where that was going to lead. And from our sources, mine and Sarah Pagonis over at the New Orleans Advocate, we've been working on this story for 6 years now, which is crazy to think that it's been 6 years of our reporting on this. But I don't think any of us really thought that it would lead to where it has gone. And that is a state investigation that our sources say involves allegations of sexual abuse involving Strain and at least 4 alleged victims, many of whom were underage at the time of the alleged abuse. And so one of those victims recently came forward, alleged victims, I should say, recently came forward to Sarah and I and sat down for an exclusive interview about the allegations that he makes about Strain. And so Mark Finn is that person. He sat down with us, said, I am one of those alleged victims, and that Strain allegedly abused me from the time I was 6 to about the time I was age 12. And so we reported on that. And then our recent report that aired and was in the paper on Monday of this week and Tuesday talked about whether or not there was a pattern of special treatment for Mark Finn because possibly of those allegations. If this alleged abuse happened, what was the relationship between these two people? The sheriff, the man who became sheriff, and then this man who is a career criminal. I mean, he admits it. He's got a violent record. By all accounts, he's been a dangerous individual. And in St. Slamony, as we all know that it's called, because of the fact that they like to sentence people under the habitual offender law. It has very much been a 3 strikes and you're out parish. Mark Finn is somewhat of an anomaly in that he has, at least 6 felony arrests and he's out. He's not in prison for life. And so we really took a look back at his record and at, the treatment that he received. He was in the work release, which is the subject of this federal investigation, for years. So he was not only being housed in this work release, which Strain had control over who would go to the work release as opposed to living at the jail, being housed at the jail. And Mark Finn was able to successfully stay at the work release in this private apartment that he had for himself with a private bathroom, with a private kitchenette.
A lot of perks for someone who's in jail.
As a career criminal, yeah. So the question I think that we were trying to get at, again, was what is Strain's relationship to this alleged victim, and what were the results of that?
And he refers to Strain as Boo Boo.
Boo Boo. Boo Boo is a nickname that our reporting tells us is Strain's nickname, from childhood. And so it's something that was sort of an alleged kind of code word. So like if people were close with Strain, they would call him Boo Boo instead of Jack. And that was how people knew that he, was tight with these people, or that he, was longtime friends or associates or whatever, that they knew each other from back in the day in Abita Springs.
Now this investigation is conducted by the state.
Yeah.
And the previous investigation is federal. So it's got at two levels.
Right. And there are sort of simultaneous investigations that our sources are telling us have been going on for quite some time. So I think the question in everyone's mind is, will Jack Strain be indicted for any crime, and when will that happen? And so I think that's the burning question for everyone who's been following this story, because all of this began, our reporting on this began when Strain was still sheriff. And then there was an election that caused him to lose the sheriff's race and seat after decades in office. And so since then, we've been reporting on this, over the years. And, I think the question is what will come of it.
Okay. Ramon, we talked about one horrible incident a while ago. There was another horrible incident on the night of Endymion. It's not clear that it was related to Endymion, but it was nearby where some people were riding their bikes down Esplanade, and a driver came and he hit them. He's been accused of being over the limits in terms of alcohol. There's some question about just how much over the limits he was.
Sure. After the Tashanti Tony is the driver you're referring to, he was arrested. He refused a breath-based alcohol test, commonly referred to as a breathalyzer. And so investigators, to try to determine how inebriated, they were immediately suspected that he was inebriated, and to determine just how much, they took him several hours to get a court order. They get that court order to draw his blood, and then the blood test that was the test that was conducted on that blood showed that he had a blood alcohol content of about 0.14, which is nearly twice the legal limit of 0.08 in Louisiana. But given the time that elapsed in between his refusal to blow and then them drawing the blood, and the rate at which alcohol metabolizes in the human body, they estimate that he may have been as inebriated as had a BAC of 0.21. Which at that level, if you have a 0.21 blood alcohol content, most people experience blackouts at that level, and so it has implications into if he's eventually convicted of what he's accused of doing, which is striking 9 cyclists and killing 2 of them. the BAC, there's a threshold. If it's if your BAC is found to be 0.15, you have a minimum 5-year sentence that you're facing if you're convicted of the allegations, and I think a 0.20, if you were to be convicted of that, then the offense would qualify as a violent one, and so therefore, if he were to serve his time and then get back out and be accused of another violent crime, they could seek to be convicted of another violent crime. Then they could use this incident to kind of enhance whatever punishment he gets, and that's kind of what. That's kind of what the significance of that announcement a few days ago was, as far as his BAC. I think I mean, we spoke to a witness shortly. My colleague Matt Sledge spoke to a witness shortly after the incident that suggested that that he was inebriated, and then in his arrest warrant, before the results of the blood test came back, he was accused of making the statement that I have a drinking problem and I should have gotten help before this. But when it comes down to the question of thinking ahead, I think the question of sentencing, if he is convicted of what he's accused of, that's when the BAC can really become a factor.
Okay. Well, Dawn, at some point the new airport will open. It was supposed to have opened. It was targeted originally for the tricentennial. Didn't quite make it, but it's still coming, as obviously. You've been looking around. What do you find out?
Well, the countdown clock is officially ticking. It opens May 15th. Ready or not, here they go. And there really will be a rapid switchover from the last flight on the night of May 14th to the first flight on the morning of May 15th. All systems will switch. So right now there's testing underway. They're running 400 plus bags on the ticketing belt. They're pouring concrete and polishing concrete. The building itself, the terminal itself, is more than 90% complete. The concessionaires are doing their build-outs. The parking garage is being striped. The elevators in the parking garage are going in. The biggest question out there for many, and if you're on Twitter and you search the Twitterverse, it's how the heck are we going to get there? And the Department of Transportation is convinced that their roadway will be finished. You get off the highway now at Loyola, go about 2 blocks over Veterans and onto a new access road directly into the airport.
So you no longer take that airport.
You no longer will take that airport exit. You will take the Loyola exit. The fire station that stood in the middle of Loyola Avenue was demolished at the end of February so that they could expand Loyola there and add lanes. I just drove it on my way here to try to really be able to visualize everything. There's still a lot of dirt road, not concrete or asphalt poured, not striped. There's a lot of work to be done in the next 6-7 weeks. There will eventually be a flyover ramp directly from the interstate to the airport. Construction on that is not even set to begin until August, which is a not quite accurate assessment either, because proposals for the construction bid aren't even due till the end of April. So the bid hasn't even been granted to a company yet. And once it starts, that's supposed to take 4 years to be complete. So we'll have this brand new airport without the brand new road to get to it for another 4 years. It's kind of tricky how challenging it really is. It's only 2.5 blocks along Loyola of surface streets. That part of my drive out there scouting around was the easiest part. It was the interstate that was the hard part. But you no longer really have easy access along Airline or other back ways into the airport. You really have to take the interstate and Loyola to be able to get to this access road into the airport. There are people suggesting it will be the biggest nightmare airport to get to in America. We'll have to wait and see if that's actually true or not. From a traveler perspective, once you're in the airport, it's supposed to be a much easier situation. There is one grand check-in area for each airline, one TSA checkpoint, one baggage. It's all in one and supposed to be much easier, plus newer concessions that are both local and nationally based chains, live music playing, a much friendlier, open air, brighter experience. So will that be mitigated by traffic nightmares? We'll have to find out.
So there's going to be this night, I guess the night of May 14th.
Everything will shut down
where at some
in
point
one
they're going
place.
to make this transition from one to the other.
And there is still no official plan for what will happen with the old airport. It will not be taking and receiving flights.
They've been talking about using maybe as a storage.
It could be storage. It could become commercial terminal space. We don't know yet. They will be still using one of the garages there, one of the long-term garages will be the economy garage, and people will be shuttled from that garage to the new terminal. The rental car facility at the old facility is the rental car facility for the airport, but it's going to be tricky, and we'll find it all out May 15th. And there will be sneak peeks of that new facility coming up very soon.
You know,
so
someone
stay tuned.
who's from New Orleans and who comes back here from time to time points out over the years that every time he comes to the airport, it's always under construction. There's always something under construction. And I think that's true of most airports.
I think
that
it
you go
is.
anywhere, airports are continuously under construction.
And then, you know, I recently flew out of Terminal D, or Gate D area, and it's so nice and modern and new that you just say it's such a shame that this lovely part of our airport is just not going to be used anymore. So we'll have to wait and see what newfangled uses they find for it.
Okay. Ramon, back to you. The Gail Benson has been in charge of the two franchises for almost a year now, and you did a piece last week for the Advocate just talking about her year on the job. What did you learn?
Well, the kind of the same message you heard as you spoke to kind of like the brain trust that Tom Benson, I think, had prepared to kind of leave her with before he passed away a little more than a year ago now, is that she has a very similar style to how he kind of led all of his, his business empire, his multi-billion-dollar business empire, and it's paid off in the first year, I think, in results on the field with the Saints. They were one of the only thing that stood between them and a second appearance in the Super Bowl was one of the worst calls in officiating history. The horses are doing well. The brewery is doing well. Her charitable giving is obviously on the same level as it was. Their charitable giving during his marriage to her was kind of like a defining characteristic. Jesuit High School received a $5 million gift recently. Second Harvest Food Bank received a $3.5 million donation to kind of help them build some their facilities out and update their facilities for both organizations. I guess the one exception, obviously, and it's a glaring exception to a lot of basketball fans, are the Pelicans, who are well out of playoff contention as we speak. And certainly had kind of a season to forget. I think the moment that Anthony Davis, the superstar forward for the team, demanded his trade out of New Orleans, and that then triggered the firing of general manager Dell Demps. And the Saints, the Pelicans stood firm on not trading Davis to his agent's preferred destination, which was the Los Angeles Lakers, to team him up with LeBron James. We're just not quite tantalized by the package of players that they could offer for a team that is well out of playoff contention itself, and so they preferred.
But is the franchise itself fairly stable?
I mean, they've got some hard decisions coming up, and they're the first to say it. Who are they going to trade Anthony Davis to during this offseason, and for what package in return? Do you keep head coach Alvin Gentry, who had had a playoff season victory last year, but has mostly not made the postseason goals that they've set before each season, and obviously they have an interim GM right now in Danny Ferry, but do you have him kind of steer the ship the rest of the way, or do you make a change there? The one thing that did make clear is that despite this kind of national drumbeat of Gail Benson is going to sell the team, Gail Benson is going to sell the team to someone who's going to move them to Seattle, to another bigger market, splashier market, vehemently deny that that's the case. The team president, Dennis Lauscha, said, I can't say it any more clear. She's not moving the team. She has no interest in selling the team. Her goal is to show that New Orleans can support both the Saints and the Pelicans once the Pelicans kind of get their act together and start winning. And
the seats have been empty in there lately.
Yes, yeah, and I think that, but they weren't for the playoff run, right? And then for the, and I think that's kind of their goal. Give us a chance. We have a plan in place to try to turn this thing around, and then.
Well, they came close last year. They got in the playoff. They won the first round, and then things really looked good.
And then ran into the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is to just that her goal is to show that this team can succeed, and then for whoever the successor owner is, thinking way ahead, hopefully, is that whoever the successor owner is, that they can keep the team here and succeed.
Now, in terms of the hierarchy, if you were charting the hierarchy, after Gail Benson, Dennis Lauscher would be next. He's president of the operations?
Yes, I mean, Dennis Lauscher, and he is also the trustee of the trust fund that a lot of that Tom Benson's business empire kind of went into once he died, and obviously Gail Benson was the beneficiary of that trust fund, over which so many legal battles were fought in the last years of his life with his estranged relatives who were cut out of succession plans.
Okay, well, very interesting. Thank you. How's Dixie Beer doing? Is it okay?
Is it good? I enjoy it, but it's also it's doing well. It's a good sell from all reports.
Okay. Well, what sort of things should we be looking forward to? Katie?
I mean, I think there's been a lot of talk about the Sewerage and Water Board and what's happening with the possibility of some state and/or tourism funding. I interviewed the governor yesterday when he was here in town for a VA event, just to ask him, sort of take his temperature about what's going to happen with those negotiations with, Mayor Cantrell obviously upset about the reporting out of the Public Utilities Committee at the City Council earlier this week, talking about conflicting numbers and sort of confusion about how much money is actually owed to the Sewerage and Water Board. And so she was upset that that might affect the negotiations. Governor Edwards made it clear to me yesterday that that's not the case. But I think that there are some legitimate questions outside of what happened this week about the finances of the Sewerage and Water Board that a lot of people want answers to. And I don't feel like the city council leaders, that a lot of watchdogs of the utility are really getting the answers that they want. So those negotiations are supposed to take place next week. So there's going to be a lot more news coming out of that, I think, next week.
Dawn?
LSU tomorrow night LSU Gymnastics competes for the SEC championship right here in New Orleans at the Superdome. It's the first time since 1998 that the SEC Gymnastics tournament has been in Louisiana, and LSU is ranked third in the nation, but the #1 seed going into tomorrow night.
Meanwhile, the basketball team will be in the
They'll be against Maryland in the second round.
In the second round of March Madness.
Exactly.
Big day for
Big
LSU
day for the
watchers.
Tigers.
And another feel-good sports story, Regis Prograis, New Orleans championship contender boxer, is going to fight in Lafayette on April 27th in the semifinals of the World Boxing Super Series. That fight will also be a world title fight for the World Boxing Association belt at 140 pounds, and that will be his first legitimate title shot. He's accumulated some kind of secondary belts, but this will be his first shot at a world championship. If you're New Orleans sports fans and we're heartbroken over how the Saints bid for a world championship ended, this could be a good consolation prize, and there's a very good chance that he will move on to if he wins, he moves on to the finals, and then he wins the Muhammad Ali Trophy, and then in that case would also win another world title, and he'd be a two belt holder.
It's been a long time since we had a boxing champion out of New Orleans. So.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks to all of you. Great job. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.